All right. We are back. Our final segment. Today is the 9th of October. All right. I promised I'd get into this issue about Yellen, Janet Yellen. She is the new nominee for the Federal Reserve to replace Ben Bernanke. And I know the issue of finances and economics and central banking gets a lot of people nervous and jerky. They don't understand it. And it's intended that way, folks. I hate to tell you. I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's intentional. They don't want you to get it because they want a dumbed down population who says, I'll let somebody else deal with that. I mean, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. What difference can I make? Well, I get that. But, you wouldn't walk down the street and see a gang of thugs coming up the same street and not be situationally aware enough to say, it's in my best interest to go to the other side of the road here. Or maybe turn off and walk into this building where I'm protected. Or at least I'm outside of their scope of influence. They're clearly loud. They're drinking. I can tell they're rowdy. That doesn't bode well for me. So situationally aware as I am, I'm going to either remove myself from the position of being at risk, or I'm going to take some kind of a mitigating action that will help to protect me. What you don't realize is that just because, you're not involved in the process doesn't mean that the process doesn't affect you. It does. You really need to understand. And I don't want you to spend all your time on it because some people, banking is kind of like Chinese math and economics. Other people, love it. But it's important that you at least have a basic foundational understanding. That's why I encourage you so strongly to read and educate yourself, because that is the only way in which we're actually going to be able to accomplish our duty. Our duty, remember now, is to be intelligent enough and informed enough to make our own opinions and our own decisions based on all the information that we can gather at hand, and compare the good and the bad and the pro and the con and the bias and the unbiased, and formulate our own opinions using our own critical thinking processes. Once we've formulated that opinion, we can modify it over time as more information comes in, but we have to be able to source out information in the first place and understand it. And with that understanding, we have to be able to have some foundational basis for reading that information and interpreting it. If you don't understand economics and central banking and the players involved, you need to. I can't strongly encourage you enough to learn that. I don't care if, get onto Wikipedia. I don't care. Just type in central banking in a browser. Go get a book. If you want to understand how central banking works and the whole concept of the Federal Reserve System, which will give you a really great idea about how money works, go get the book by, what the heck is his name? I interviewed him, for crying out loud, and I can't even remember his name. G. Edward Griffin. Go get the book by G. Edward Griffin, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Go read it. I'm telling you, I know it's thick. I know you get tired when you read. I know it makes you want to go to sleep. Great. Shut off that damn stupid idiot box in front of you every night and read instead. You've got to start paying attention and understanding what's going on around you. You can no longer live in anonymity, if you will, and just sit there and pretend as if none of this is really happening. You've got to be educated about what's happening around you. And the only way that you're going to get there is by learning. And this idea of, well, I can learn later isn't going to really help you. You've got to learn it now. I can't encourage you enough to get that book, because it will open your eyes up to banking and central banking and economics, at least on a you'll have enough information to be able to at least understand the information swirling around you. You'll understand how money is created, how the Federal Reserve creates money, what is the money supply. And I got to tell you, this article, which is in the New York Times, is extraordinarily important for you to read. The article, I'm sorry, it's not the New York Times, it's the Telegraph. You can find it by going to our website at americasvoicenow.org. It's also on our Facebook page. And the title of the article is Rejoice. The Yellen Fed will print money forever to create jobs. Now, what's important for you to understand about that is that Janet Yellen is being put forth as the person, the heir apparent to take over the United States Federal Reserve. Now, the Fed is the master of our nation. Let's understand ourselves. And let's understand what's going on. The Federal Reserve is what sets our monetary policy. They're the ones who set our interest rates through monetary policy. They create they are the ones who create and maintain and modify the world's the world's reserve currency. They create treaties with other foreign nations. They interact with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and all the rest of that, right? They interact with other Federal Reserve banks. They borrow and lend money internationally as well as domestically. And the Fed is the regulator for all banks in the United States. There's very, very few that don't fall under their regulatory arm. And those that don't fall under their regulatory arm are either annexed out every time there's a bust and a boom in the economy, or they are pressured to the point where they have to fall under Fed regulatory role, which means that they own the whole monetary system. Now, Janet Yellen is coming out and saying that basically, and they always talk in what's called Fed speak, right, which is this, convoluted kind of phrasing and language that, is leaves you wondering, if you don't really understand this, what they're talking about. But here's what she says, and this is the key line in her latest discussion, right? She tipped her hand in a floor speech to the labor unions in February. 3 million Americans have been looking for work for 1 year or more. That's 1/4 of all unemployed workers, which is down from 2011's peak, but far larger than was seen before the Great Recession. These are not just statistics to me. We know that long-term unemployment is devastating to workers and their families. When you're unemployed for 6 months or a year, it's hard to qualify for a lease, so even the option of relocating to find a better job is often off the table. The toll is simply terrible on the mental and physical health of workers, on their marriages, and on their children. It all makes perfect sense. And here comes the key line. If the current elevated rate of unemployment is largely cyclical, then the straightforward solution is to take action to raise aggregate demand. If the unemployment is instead substantially structural, some worry that attempts to raise aggregate demand will have little effect on unemployment and serve only to stoke inflation. I see the evidence as consistent with the view that the increase in unemployment since the onset of the Great Recession has been largely cyclical and not structural. Oh boy. Let me interpret Fed speak. Here's the problem. Cyclical, from the way that in Fed speak, means that over time the unemployment line will come down. People will begin to, as the recession eases off and our country comes back to an economy and the GDP rises, that unemployment will be absorbed back in to the country, and that we will have unemployment that's back around 6.5% or 7%. Okay. Here's the problem with that. One, our actual unemployment is really about 18 to 20%. If you count everybody who's no longer working, and how do I prove that number? Well, I go to the usdebtclock.org, and it tells me that we have a U.S. population of 316 million people. We have 114 million taxpayers, and we have a workforce of 144 million. Okay. Here's the problem. We have, and these numbers are all on the right of usdebtclock.org, so make sure you go there. We have not people that are no longer operating in the labor force, and they define that as this: persons who are neither employed nor unemployed are not in the labor force. This category includes retired persons, students, those taking care of children and other family members, and those who are neither working nor seeking work. Okay. That number is currently 90 million people. And the official unemployed number is the official unemployed. Now, this is federal official numbers, right, from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, is 11.2 million people. The total number of actual unemployed, and this includes the marginally attached workers plus total employed part-time for economic reasons, is 21 million. 10 million more than they're estimating. And here's the problem. We know that since this, in just the last year alone, 77% of all the jobs that were created were part-time. 77% of all the jobs created were part-time. Largely as a result of Obamacare, because nobody wants to hire a full-time worker anymore, because then you got to provide them with insurance. But also because companies are cutting back because the numbers just aren't there. And the consumers don't have the money because they're not working, so they can't afford to buy the goods. And 70% of our economy is based exclusively on consumerism. In other words, 70% of our economy is generated by you buying crap. Food, gasoline, houses, cars, products, furniture, washer and dryer, a new refrigerator, clothing. But it's also generated by your purchase of an iPod, a new cell phone, a computer. You know, all of these things that are really not necessary, but, you know, are part of the, you know, they're part of the makeup of American life. And when economies are down and you don't have the income because your husband's lost a job or your wife has lost a job or one or both of you have lost a job and you've now taken a part-time job just to make ends meet, you no longer have the money to afford the goods and the services that you were accustomed to. When that spending stops, employers are required to then cut back because you're not buying the product that they produce or manufacture or service or deliver. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so what we now have is a real unemployment rate that is probably closer to the 18 to 20% mark. We'll never really know because the government is shading the numbers. They're playing with the statistics to try to hide the truth. But here's what we do need to know. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not cyclical. This is structural. Structural means it's the new normal. Structural means this is the kind of unemployment we will see going forward for a decade or more. Structural means that we're not going to see some resurgence in our economy in the next year or 2 or 3 or 4 years that is going to reabsorb all of these unemployed workers and put them back into full-time jobs. That's structural, ladies and gentlemen. And here's the problem. The way that she is looking at this, and as the new head of the Fed, it matters how she looks at this. She believes that our unemployment is not structural, but cyclical. The problem with that is that from that point forward, every decision that she makes is predicated upon false assumptions. Right? I mean, if you misunderstand the basic nature of the equation, if you input the wrong numbers, you're going to come out with the wrong answer. And she's putting in the wrong numbers. She's putting in numbers that say that this is a problem that, let me try to analogize this in a better fashion. If she's putting in numbers into the equation that are not accurate in the first place, if you're trying to figure out how many students in the classroom make up, the percentage of the total of the school, you've got to have an accurate count of how many students are in the classroom in the first place. Right? But if you're sitting there and you're saying, we're only going to count the students that are actually physically in the room, but half of them are out to recess and 5 more are in the bathroom, you're not predicating your assumption that there's 12 kids in the classroom on the right number. Half of them are still in school, but they're just in the lunchroom, and there's 5 more in the bathroom. You're not going to get a correct number in your equation. You're not going to get a sum at the end of that equation that actually reflects the total population of the school. Because you're putting the wrong numbers into the calculator. And at the end, the calculator is going to spit you out an answer, but it's an answer that is incorrect because it's based on false information being put in, and that's the problem. Yellen believes that our unemployment rate is not structural, but that it's cyclical. So she's counting on the fact that it's going to come back, and it's not. Not in the foreseeable future. Not in the next 10 years. You don't need me to say this. You can look at plenty of other economists out there that are going to tell you that we have reached the end of the road, and there's no more places for us to turn. There's nowhere for us to go. We've walked down this path until we've hit the dead end. The other calculation that she's making a mistake about is inflation. She's defining inflation, and she's utilizing inflation as a measurement that is inaccurate also. Because, again, you've got the same problem that we had in the last analogy. They're calculating inflation. The problem is that in over time, and this is over the past couple of 2 decades, really, but the numbers that they are using to measure inflation have been redefined. And they now take energy and they take food out of the equation. Well, with all due respect, when was the last time you saw the price of gas and how that impacted your bottom line? When was the last time you went to the store and you looked at the price of food, ladies and gentlemen? When you take food and energy, those are 2 of the most expensive aspects of your life for most average Americans. We're not talking about those people who are, have expendable cash. We're talking about the guy who lives pretty much hand to mouth, which every economist will agree now is the vast majority of America. It wasn't years ago, but it is now. So when you talk about inflation, if you are leaving off food and energy, you're leaving off 2 major aspects of the equation that will affect the outcome, that will affect the solution of the mathematical problem. And again, it's like sitting there, and to take this analogy of the school children again, right? You're saying, okay, we're going to bring cookies in for the class. So let's count the number of kids that are in the class. And again, you neglect to count those that are in the bathroom and those that are at recess. And you say, well, there's 12 children presently in the class, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we bring enough cookies for 12 children tomorrow morning. Well, tomorrow morning comes, and there's 12 children in the class, plus the 5 who were in the bathroom, plus 10 more who were at lunch or at recess. So now do you understand the problem? Now you don't have enough cookies to go around. Inflation is what they use to keep manipulating the money system. If inflation comes down to a specific point and unemployment comes down to 6.5%, that's their trigger to stop buying debt, our debt. This is the same debt, by the way, that the Chinese don't want and the Japanese don't want anymore. Nobody in Europe wants it, and those that would want it don't have any money to buy it. So the Fed itself is buying. And this is their excuse to continue to buy. Here's the problem. They're predicating all of their decisions on 2 issues, inflation and unemployment. And they're not looking at the real numbers for either of those 2 factors in order to put them into the equation correctly. I got to tell you, after you're done reading this article, and I'm going to wrap the show for the day. After you're done reading this article, I want you to start utilizing a good critical thinking skill. and it's one which I've found. And you have to be critical in your operations or your thinking as you utilize this technique. And it's not a technique; it's just good idea. When you're done reading the article, I want you to, for a moment, just think for yourself and try to ascertain, what does this mean? Draw the conclusions that the author is giving you, which I'm in pretty much fair agreement with a lot of what he says in this particular one. And if you can't find it by going to our website, you can find it by going to Rejoice. The Yellen Fed will print money forever to create jobs. Okay? The Yellen Fed will print money forever to create jobs. Just type that into a browser and it'll find you. You'll find it. But after you're done reading the article, I want you to start doing something on a routine basis. When you read an article that I give you that I post up and I give you to read, I want you to study it. And then after you've drawn your own conclusions, before you go on and do anything else, before you crap out on the article and click it off, excuse me, I want you to start doing a new technique. I want you to start reading some of the comments that are posted by other readers, especially in some of the more intellectually based articles. When you read stuff in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Telegraph and stuff like that, I mean, if you're reading something on some kind of a half-baked, biased website, either left or right, you get a lot of crackpots in there who post these comments. There's a lot of BS going on the web. And you're going to have to use your critical thinking skills to filter out the trash. But there are some people on some of these more intellectual sites that will give you a very, very good next thought process associated with these stories. And please understand what I'm saying. I'm not telling you to buy anybody else's opinion hook, line, and sinker. But this is an opportunity for you to exercise that idea to say, I can listen to multiple opinions on both sides of the fence, and then I can formulate my own opinion based upon all the information that I've been able to gather. Now, in a case like this particular article has 403 comments. And some of them are 1 and 2 lines, and some of them are, 2 paragraphs, and some of them are 8 paragraphs because the guy really got rolling. What's important for you to understand is that oftentimes you'll find some very good information in these comments because these are people who apparently, in some cases may know more about the topic than you do. But it's also, again, it's a concept of listening to multiple opinions, both for and against, before drawing your own conclusions, before formulating your own opinion. Never parrot anyone else's. The goal here is for you to be astute, for you to be independent, sovereign in your mindset, sovereign in your opinion. The goal here is for you to be able to learn enough that you can formulate an opinion. You can't do that if you only read one side of the political bias, if you will. You got to read both sides of the coin. You got to read the pros, the things you agree with, and you got to read the cons, the things you don't agree with. Because sometimes you'll find that, even though that comes from someone you detest, their opinion or their idea, it does change. You gather information that is being withheld from you by any other means. If you don't read any of that, then you're not really hearing you're not gathering all of the available information. I mean, think of it like this. If you walk into the house, you've been outside, you're wearing dark sunglasses because it's very bright outside. When you walk into the house, what happens? Well, the house is normally darker inside than the outside, so you're struggling to see. You take the sunglasses off so that you can gather more light. And that's the point here, folks. You need to gather more light. Now, that light doesn't necessarily show you things that you want to see, but you need it in order to be able to see, to find your way, so you don't trip over the baby carriage or the kid's toy or bang your shin on the couch. But with that light, with that illumination, by taking those glasses off and letting the additional light in, whatever it shows us, good or bad, it enables us to then maneuver. It enables us to find our way. It enables us to say, Oh, I can take a left here and a right here, and I can get over there. It's important that we understand and utilize everything, every tool we can get. Right now, folks, we are in so much trouble. We are in so much danger. It is so urgent and so critical that you have every tool in your kit at work right now. And you've got to, you wouldn't go out there and skin a deer with a dull knife. You wouldn't try to chop vegetables with a butter knife. You've got to use a sharp tool. And it's up to you to sharpen it. No one can do that for you. Nobody can instill in you that sharp edge. That comes from you. Comes from your willful, intentional, purposeful drive to gather and gain knowledge. And guess what? Reading opinions that don't necessarily agree with yours hones and sharpens your steel. It hones and sharpens your steel. Remember something. Steel on steel. It can dull it or it can sharpen it. And it's up to you as to what angle you put that blade on. If you sit there and you take that blade and you run it straight across a steel, you're going to dull the blade. But if you take that and you hone it, you will sharpen the blade. Ladies and gentlemen, hone your steel. Sharpen your skills. Educate yourselves. Learn to critically think. Learn to utilize inquisitive thinking. Take the time to do it. No matter what else. Because we need critically thinking, logical, reasoned people now more than ever. And at some point in time, those are the people who are going to be able to either save us or save themselves and their families. This cannot go on. We have reached the point where all we're waiting for now is the bubble to burst. It's like being on a balloon, a hot air balloon, and we're sitting up at the top of the balloon. We're sitting at the top. And someone is down below shooting at the balloon. And the bullets are missing us, but we know at some point they're going to put enough holes in that balloon that it's going to collapse. You've got to get your act together. Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially. It's not optional anymore. You don't have the luxury of sitting down and saying, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Winter is coming. Winter is coming. Will you gather what you need to survive? The food, the fuel, the fur, the clothing to keep you warm? Or will you be caught completely unawares? And when that cold weather strikes, you'll be sitting there undefended, indefensible, ignorant, and you will die. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm the host here every day. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us on facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Just America's Voice Now. And also, you can find this and every other program we do up on YouTube. youtube.com/America's Voice Now. That's our channel on YouTube. You can share those videos with your friends on Facebook, with any other social media you utilize. If you can't share them with your friends on Facebook because you don't use Facebook, great. Just copy the link at the top in the address bar and email it to 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 of your friends and say, hey, listen to this program. I think this makes sense. Please understand, ladies and gentlemen, we're rapidly running out of time for us to prepare ourselves to utilize our critical thinking skills and to be as educated and informed as we possibly can. It's what's in the best interest of ourselves and our families, too. Have a great great day. We'll see you tomorrow.